evening. I'd like to call this Concord Township Zoning Commission hearing or meeting into order today. We have a public hearing first on the agenda, and we'd like to get started here. So Heather, if you could please call the roll.
Mr. Eiffelise?
Here.
Mr. Peterson?
Here.
Mr. Ruppert?
Here.
Mr. Schindler?
Here.
Mr. Lingenfelter?
Here. Okay, the first item on the agenda is a public hearing for the following zoning text amendments to the Concord Township zoning resolution as initiated by motion of the Zoning Commission. Okay, the first item is amendment number 1, revise section 5.02a, definitions as follows. Revise the definition of accessory building or use, provide definition for new term breezeway. Amendment number 2 would be to revise section 15.02 use regulations to clarify that the permitted and conditional uses are principal uses in the bold text in table 15.02-1. And amendment number 3, revise section 15.03a, general requirements for accessory buildings as follows. Add provision that accessory buildings shall not exceed the height of the principal building on the lot. Add a provision limiting lots greater than 2 acres have no more than 2 detached accessory buildings with a maximum combined gross floor area of 1,532 square feet. Add a provision that any attached or detached accessory building shall not exceed the square footage of the living area on the ground level of the principal building of the lot, but also to not exceed maximum square footages permitted for detached accessory buildings. Councilor, just as a matter of note, would it be better, since there are 3 different amendments, we approach each one and then vote on each amendment as we complete that particular, or can we do them all as a group as one full decision?
However you want to do it. I think the vote, when you actually do vote, which would be in the actual meeting part, not in the public hearing, right? You can separate it out. It might be just cleaner to do it that way.
Right, that's what I was
vote.
thinking, approaching each amendment
That's
individually.
fine. Sure.
Okay,
Sure.
that was my thought. Okay, okay. So, Heather, if you could, would you mind giving us a little background on this, what this public hearing is all about? Give us a little information, explain what...
Yeah, just to give a little background, I know the Zoning Commission has held several work sessions this year to discuss this topic. Initially, an issue was raised by another resident and a concern regarding rather large garage additions to smaller homes. And we started to look at, what are our, size limitations when it comes to residential properties. Is there any restrictions on the size of an attached accessory building, i.e. a garage? And how does that relate to, the main use of the property, which is the dwelling in most of our cases in residential properties. So after several months of looking at what we have in the books and what we can do to maybe try to keep the scale of garages more in line with, the primary use of the property. This is kind of where we're at, what we're proposing tonight, a couple modifications to some definitions, and then also some new regulations, which you stated already.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. With that said, what I'd like to do is I'd like to formally open this public hearing. And first, we will start with public comments on this. And what I would ask is that anybody wants to, if you come up to the podium and you'd like to speak and address the board, first of all, I'd like you to make sure that you direct your comments to the board. I don't want any comments to the audience or anywhere else. Just make sure you address us. Okay, we do have 3 separate amendments. So if you want to speak about a specific issue that's important to you or you have comments about, make sure you let us know which amendment you're talking to. We have 3 different ones, so that way we can follow along and understand what your thoughts are with that regard. And we'll start first in the room with people that are in favor of this zoning resolution amendments. And so I'll start on my left side will be my left, your right, to make these comments. Is there anybody that would like to speak that's in favor of this resolution?
Can I ask just a question? I'm so sorry. What if you don't know if you're in favor of it or not? Because I don't understand it. I came up here to understand what we're solving for, but I don't know that I'm for or against it.
Are you gonna some to identify
Right.
yourself, please?
I apologize. Dan Gillespie.
Can you have him
And
come
you're,
up?
and yeah,
Why don't you have him come up,
to
and then
the,
he can
come on
ask.
up to the podium for me, sir. I just want to make sure, we want to capture. No, that's okay.
I just
No, yep.
don't know how to address that.
No, that's okay. State your full name and address, please.
Dan Gillespie, 11239 Prouty Road.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead. I'm
I've been a
sorry.
resident for
No,
30
yes,
years
sure.
living there. And so I read through this and I have questions. I don't know if I'm for or against it. I understand based on what you said, you're trying to solve for a problem, which sounds like large garages being built on smaller homes. So I'm really just wanting to understand, like, how big of an issue is this? How do these proposed changes in language address the issue? Are we talking about an isolated event? Is there data that suggests this is running rampant throughout Concord Township? So again, just trying to better understand what we're solving for and how this is going to solve for it.
Okay, all right. Well, my recommendation is if you want to participate this evening, you're certainly welcome. Your input is welcome by the board. We want to hear what your thoughts are. And if there's a point in time when you catch on to what's going on and you feel like you have an opinion you'd like to offer, we'll make time and accommodate your ability to come on up and address the board. Absolutely, not a problem. So just sit back, relax, enjoy, and listen. And if you have any questions in the process, you can certainly come up and address the board. Okay, so next on the first row, are you in favor of these amendments in the first row? In the first row where somebody's sitting.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So if you could come up, please state your full name for the record and then address.
George Chris Meldrum, 11159 Prouty Road, Concord. I have some familiarity with the draft of these resolutions, and as you're aware, was the one that has brought some of this problem with the large garage to the board's attention. I'm really very appreciative that the board has grasped onto this and attacked it, very diligently. As far as I'm concerned, I don't have, if these, seems like these regulations do address the kind of issue I saw on the parcel next to my house, and potentially could address some issues on other parcels in the future. So, with that in general, I'm certainly very much in favor of these revised regulations being, agreed to and put onto, put into the zoning regs. I know Dan's a neighbor of mine, and Dan obviously has some questions, you know that. So there may be some things there are a lot of things that have been changed on these 3 different amendments. So I'm not in a position to address those or critique them as far as I'm concerned. If those are what the board wants to do, I'm certainly all in favor of it.
Super.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. All right, the next row behind. Anybody else, anybody would like to come up on the next row in favor of the amendment? No? Okay, last row, sir? No? Okay, I'll move over to this side of the room. Sir, would you be interested in speaking in favor? No. Okay, so we have everybody that's spoken in favor. Now what I'd like to do is hear anybody that's in opposition to these amendments. Okay, so I would like to hear any comments of anybody that might be in opposition. Anybody on this side of the room that wants to speak in opposition? Come on up.
I might be in opposition.
Okay, that's all right. You'll have, no,
because
he's not sure yet.
I'm still trying to
He's still trying to figure out whether he's for it or against it.
Okay,
Please state your
so-
full name and address for the record.
So as far as the size of the accessory
Full
building,
name,
it doesn't seem.
full
I'm
name
sorry.
and address.
I'm Carmen Kaimi at
There you go.
12
Spell the last name, please.
CAI, M as in Mary, I, at 12014 Girdle Road.
Thank you.
So the size really hasn't changed much from what the old resolution was, and as from what I see it, 1,532 square feet maximum. Is that not what it always was? Or very close to that amount? I'm not sure that that's clarified, that the size is going from one, like 2,000 square feet to a certain other size. The only other thing it says that it can't exceed the size of the primary dwelling first floor, which I don't think it was worded that way before, which I'd like to see some clarification of that. I have an accessory building that's pretty much the max, okay? And at the time I built it, I was told I could build another one to that size, okay? But I couldn't build two, all right? Part of my issue with the accessory buildings is Concord Township is not only a bedroom community, but it's also a community where people tend to work from home a little bit, or they have horses, they have animals, they have large pieces of property equipment, and they need a building to store their stuff in so it's not outside. So I know we see a lot of buildings that are like really offensive. There's some around that are just, they look like warehouses, I agree. And I feel that maybe we need to put more of a standard in that limits the look of the building so it doesn't look like a machine shed type quote. And maybe you put aesthetics into it that it has to look more like the house. Like some HOAs have in their rulings, they have that it has to match the dwelling somewhat, I feel that would probably keep a lot of people from having neighbors that are disgruntled with what somebody built as far as an accessory building. So size-wise, I'm not really in disagreement with the size. They shouldn't be gigantic. There is some around, obviously we see that are really big. They're housing multiple motorhomes. A lot of people around here have motorhomes and trailers and recreational vehicles that they need to house. And I think that's why they have accessory buildings. So with that being said, I am, I guess, in favor in a way for the amendment, but not to make it to where someone that has a use can't build something to take care of their use. If they have a farm or it's not really a farm and they, if it's a farm and it's an agricultural building, I'm assuming that this wouldn't even pertain because it's an agricultural building. Is that correct? As far as zoning? You can't regulate agricultural buildings as far as zoning. Is that correct?
You need to address the chair.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Heather, do you know if that's?
It's not a simple answer. We
Right.
we can regulate agricultural uses in certain circumstances.
Right.
Does the state of Ohio not have an agricultural regulation that you cannot regulate an agricultural building? In
Townships have limited authority to regulate agricultural uses. So we have some authority. So we already have, if your lot is less than 5 acres, and if you're in a subdivision, a platted subdivision, or if you're in an area where there have been 15 or more lots split under certain sections of the Ohio Revised Code, we can regulate ag. But if the lot is over 5 acres, we do not have the authority to regulate an agricultural
Okay,
use.
so an agricultural building on a lot over 5 acres, so would not pertain at all to this as long as it's an agricultural building. And some people build a building and they say it's agricultural and it's not. I understand the issues with that. But I just like to see that more clarified so that people don't, think that they're never going to be able to build a barn if they buy 5 acres in Concord Township. One of the things that doesn't pertain to this at all is that we probably need to have bigger lots in Concord and we might eliminate this whole problem, but that's a whole nother issue. So I guess that's the end of my speech.
It's okay.
All right.
Yes, we appreciate your comments. Thank you very much. Sir, on this side, are you opposed? Okay, all right. Yes, sir. Absolutely, come on up. Please state your full name and address for the record.
Jordan Tresker, 112.
Sorry to stop you. Can you please spell your last name? I couldn't hear.
Tresker, Tresger, 11261 Proudy Road. I'm not completely against all of this because of the warehouse situation. Pretty much, you build a warehouse onto your house. But my only issue is I guess I knew about the loophole and stuff. I just purchased this house, on Prouty Road. It's overall 1,300 square foot. The floor space is around 800. Well, my garage now that's attached, it's got a lower part and an upper part. It's equaling around 1,300 square feet already, which is already the size of my house. But my plan was to add onto the back so I'm able to pull my own personal vehicle in. I have a crew cab, long bed, dually, so it's long, and be able to work on it. Put a lift in there maybe. It's all personal. I have a plow truck that I use. So that's where it's like with this coming forward, that's gonna, I don't know if I'm grandfathered in because I purchased it on the old stuff, but that purchase was, made in the intent of expanding my garage. I have a flat roof on it that's really low. I want to put a new roof on it. That's why I thought put a new roof, raise it up, let's make it deeper so I can use it. So the square footage wise, I get with my case, it's very large difference. I plan on adding on in 5 years and all that other stuff, but so that's my concern for me personally. And then for the community, I do agree with the aesthetics of the building could be adjusted, and the square footage of the building on Prouty Road versus his house, looks like a landing strip the way it is. And, I don't agree with that. The way I want to do mine would look more like a house. So because I know I probably have more square footage in my garage than my house, but it wouldn't look like it from the outside. So that's where it's like I'm going to run into a huge issue because of this. But, I think it would make it look, community look better, make everything just around there look better. I don't think my neighbors would disagree that what my garage looks like now is an eyesore. So that's just where I do think the literature or maybe something can be changed in it so you don't have a massive, 40 by 60 pole barn attached to your house and then, just call it a day because it's attached. So I agree with it. I don't know that it could be changed a little bit.
How many acres do you have?
4 acres.
You have 4, okay.
And that's another thing. I've got 2 doors down from my in-law. He's my father-in-law. We connect in the back. He has horses, and down the road I wanted to get, a little barn. My fiance wants 2 cows and stuff like that. So I don't know if that would hinder, because I'm under 5 acres, if that's going to be an issue if we tie it into using his pasture, even though it's a building on my property or not. So that's just all stuff that could be an issue for me down the road. That's why I'm just wanted to come up here and put my 2 cents in at least.
Well, and I think that you bring up some interesting points. And I think that it's wise as a resident of the township that before you put a shovel in the ground or before you start to pour concrete or start putting up structures is to give Heather a call and make an appointment and come in and talk to her and tell her about what you're thinking about doing. And Heather will be able to tell you if you're within the guidelines of the zoning resolution, or if you need to make some adjustments, or she can certainly, kind of steer you in the right direction as to what you can or can't do. And then you have the option that at least you'll know. The worst thing that can happen is you start and then we run into problems where it's a violation, and then that could cost you money that you don't need to spend. And, so the best thing is always to check first. So the folks here at the town hall are always available. So I'd give her a call and talk to her and set up an appointment, show her what you're looking at doing.
Okay.
Make sure you get all the right permits and everything, and then there's no surprises, right?
Yeah.
That's probably the best way to approach it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Anybody else have any comments? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I now
Come on back up.
opposed, so can I speak?
Sure. Come on up. Go ahead and state your name and address for the record
Again?
for me. Yes, please.
Dan Gillespie, Gillespie, 11239 Prouty Road. So I will say I'm in agreement with commercial buildings and big warehouses and all that, and I really like the comment about maybe instead of restricting size, restrict aesthetics, how the building looks, how it blends in, because I think that's more important than the exact size of it. Also, the 2 buildings, accessory buildings, which I'm not sure, is an accessory building different than any building, is it a specific kind of building, an accessory building? Is there a definition of what is considered an accessory building, or
Yes,
is it
there-
any building?
No, we have definitions for everything, so yeah, there's a definition for an accessory building.
Okay.
It's in the zoning text.
It says that the two would be maxed out at 1,532 square feet, the two combined. How did you arrive at that number? It seems like an odd number just randomly picked out of the air.
Oh, believe me, we had a lot of conversations about that. There was a lot of discussion on the square footage and what would be fair, what would be reasonable. We try to come up with a number that, is either something that was already existing or something that would give us a number in between. And believe me, we went through many discussions on what those numbers would look like, and that's what we came up with.
Okay, so I'll trust you've done your homework on that, and it just seemed random to me, but, so there's three restrictions: the height of the building, the number of buildings, and the square footage of the building that's being addressed through here. The square footage is being addressed twofold. One, by the number of external buildings and the maximum combined square footage, but the other one is by this cannot exceed the square footage of the living area on the ground level. So, to clarify, if I had a house that had 1,000 square feet living area on the ground level, and I wanted to put up a 30 by 40 barn, I would not be allowed to because it exceeds 1,000 square feet. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and even if I have 6 acres, which I'm just under 6 acres. Okay, my issue is I've lived here for 30 years, moved to Prouty Road 30 years ago. There was a shack of a house, beautiful piece of property, 6 acres. We had less than 1,000 square feet. What I did was I built a pole barn and had horses, and I raised my kids, and they went to 4-H. His future wife, he's going to be my son-in-law, she won grand champion in 4-H by raising animals on my property. I since put up another 30 by 40 barn after I retired to house my tractor, my pickup truck that I inherited when my father passed away, along with some other minor equipment. For 30 years, I've lived a great life here. It's been wonderful. It's a semi-rural community. You're close, to the city. You're able to do what you want in your yard with your animals, horses, dogs. We had pigs at one point for 4-H. It's been wonderful. Under what you're proposing here, young people moving in to Concord would not be able to do what I did and live the type of lifestyle that I have lived there and have enjoyed. So while I'm not completely opposed, I think this is excessive in what you're requiring people to do, especially people with 3, 4, 5, 6 acres. So I don't want the big factory next to me. I don't want the big warehouse. I don't want the eyesores. But I think this carries it way too far, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, if you look at a standard shed, just a standard shed you would put on your house, on your lot, 10 by 12. Say, let's call that. That's pretty common, right? Size. That's 120 square feet, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
the math is correct.
isn't it? 10 by 12. 120, right? 120 square feet. That's a 10 by 12 storage shed. That's
Okay.
pretty decent size. We're talking 1,500 square feet. So that's 15 times that size. That's a tremendous amount. So you're talking, you could put 2 buildings, 750 square feet.
I feel like I need
Right.
more space right now, and I have 2 30 by 40 buildings on my property.
Right. Yeah,
So I guess it depends on your
30
lifestyle.
by
If you
40
wanna-
is, that's a pretty substantial, 30 by 40 is a pretty substantial size building.
For somebody living in a residential community, a development, it should be fair size. Somebody living on 6 acres with horses and pigs, and that's not significant at all, in my opinion.
Well, I think, and then therein lies the issue with the agricultural use versus, if you're agricultural use versus recreational use, that's where things change. And it depends on the zoning district that you're in, because these are specified towards certain zoning districts. Okay, so if you're in one of those zoning districts that falls within those parameters, then yeah, there's a limitation. But, as far as the other things, I would humbly disagree that, with the 1,500 square feet, we thought was a very generous amount of square footage, to be able to utilize for an accessory building, or you could have up to 2 accessory buildings, right? So as long as they don't exceed the 1,500 square feet, I mean, a 750 square foot building is pretty substantial.
Well, I'd like to see how you could fit all my stuff in the building that size. So
Right.
I guess we agree to disagree.
Sure.
I wanted to give my input.
Sure.
I would like to see this remain semi-rural where a family can move in, live the type of lifestyle I did, and they can't do it now with these restrictions go into place. So I don't have any other comments.
Okay, all right, super, thank you very much, appreciate your input. Any other comments from the audience at this point, either for or against the amendments? No?
I'd like to make one more comment.
All right, come on up.
Either for or against.
You gotta come up.
I'd like to clarify something.
Sure.
Carmen Paini, C-A-I-M-I, 12014 Girdled Road, Concord. So just to clarify, you're saying a 1,532 square foot building, but if you have a home like mine, which is a retirement home with a first floor bedroom, unlike his, he doesn't plan on having 3 more kids, nor do I. I have 3 bedrooms, but 2 of them are upstairs. I have a small house, okay, 1,800 square foot house, but that's combined square footage, okay? People are buying homes with very small first floors because we're all getting older and we don't want 2 stories. We don't want Summerwood where there's 3,000 square foot houses, okay? And sure, they can get by with a little shed because all they're putting in it is their riding lawnmower and a couple bicycles and, some lawn furniture maybe. But when you have a property and you also are, let's say, retired, and you only have a small home and don't intend to exceed that, your building size can only be, I'm gonna say the first floor of my house is 900 square feet, okay? I could only build a building 900 square feet now with your new zoning amendment. That's wrong, okay? That is completely, as far as I'm concerned, wrong with the way Concord was set out to be. It wasn't set out to be all these developments with houses stacked on top of each other, built high, some of them probably 3 levels, okay? And they don't even have room for a 10 by 10 shed, okay? So that's a whole different animal, okay? I think this needs to be clarified a little more into being an amendment to change our zoning text into the acreage, and it should be the total square foot of a home, because the trend really is to build more ground level homes with, they're not that big. It's something everybody needs, okay? Everybody, as they get older, they don't want a 3,000 square foot house. So I just wanted to clarify that and let you guys think that maybe we should look again at revising the amendment to say that it's combined square footage, because you're really penalizing somebody because of the style of their house. If it's a ranch house and it's 2,200 square feet on the first floor, that's not a problem. But if it's a 2-story home with a little loft like I have, then you're really hampering someone. Why should they be hampered if they have 10 acres and a small home? That doesn't make any sense. It should be more of an acreage issue than a square footage of the house issue, as far as I'm concerned. And I'd like you guys to look at that. Okay, thank you.
Super, thank you. Any other comments from the audience? Don't want to cut anybody off or want to make sure everybody has their say if they have something they want to say. Anybody else? Okay. All right, at this point then, we will close the public portion of this hearing and we'll move to discussion on the board. We've had some comments this evening, both for and against, and some questions. I think some valid questions have been brought up in this process. Frank, any comments?
Mr. Chairman, one of the things we have in Concord Township is the zoning board of appeals, which if an issue comes up, of course, then you're gonna, sorry, I can't get my voice any higher.
Maybe use the microphone.
The microphone just doesn't go in here. That we have a means of going to address your issues, which is the zoning board of appeals. So when it comes to that, the only time you would really get into any problems is if you had neighbors that would object to it. You go to your neighbors when you appeal, and the board goes around asking all your neighbors if they have an objection to an alteration, whatever you want to do to your property. That's an alternative you have to address issues like you're saying. Being a community that's as large as ours, you have to understand that we are growing. And a lot of the people that move out here want smaller lots, smaller houses and stuff. We feel we've addressed a lot of these issues with the amendments we've put in here to upgrade that. When you talk about styles of homes, Concord does not have an architectural review board. So we can't dictate to anybody what their property or home looks like. So we would hope that they would address it to look aesthetically to your main dwelling, your home, but a lot of people don't. So we try to do what we best can do as far as zoning to address issues like that. And that's what I think we've tried to accomplish with some of the things we've made the changes to here. That's my comment.
Thanks, Frank.
You're welcome.
Hiram, any comments?
Nothing to add, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Ifelis.
I'm a little confused. I appreciated the statements, particularly as it relates to acreage. I guess I was going back to what was in existence before the amendment. And I'm a little confused since we've talked about it. I don't know if there's be a little refresher here of what we had before. In order to, I don't know, for me to get the perspectives correct here between the amendment and what we had before. What is it, relating to the maximum square footage of the detached buildings? I guess I'm just asking for a kind of a review, if you will, what it was before. I'm reading the markouts.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to
could you
help
please?
answer your question, Mr.
Thank you.
Ifelis, if
Thank
you
you.
would
I was
like
gonna
me
say,
to.
Heather,
Yeah.
if you could-
So we do have in front of us, and these were posted on the website too, along with the legal notice, but
Right.
the amendments with track changes. So if
Yes.
you look at the website, you can see what the existing language is, and then you'll see red underline, or red text is, underlined text is new verbiage, and then red strike-through text is what we're proposing to take away. So as far as the sizes on lots less than 2 acres, we stuck with those same maximum sizes that were already in the zoning resolution, 1,024 square feet, and then lots greater than 2 acres, we kept the 1532. We had a lengthy discussion as to where did the township come up with those figures initially, which we really could not determine. So the board, after, we decided to stick with those numbers, but then what we changed specifically for lots over 2 acres is one of the new additions is limiting it to only 2 detached accessory buildings, not to exceed a combined square footage of 1532. That is a new restriction, whereas before you could have multiple buildings, each being 1532. And again, these are for buildings that are not exempt agricultural uses. So Mr. Gillespie that came up that talked about a 6-acre parcel with a horse barn, that horse barn is not subject to that restriction.
That's-
under the current code nor the proposed resolution.
Yeah, that was the next question,
Yeah.
because these properties are not even subject to this,
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
yeah.
So I hope that
Yeah.
helps clarify where we
Yeah.
were and what we're suggesting now. But one additional limitation, which is new, is tying it to the square footage of the living area on the first floor of the home. And a question was raised, or a statement was brought up about people want smaller homes in Concord, so you might have ranches, things like that. We do have minimum living area restrictions for single-family dwellings
Right.
that are already in place in a different section of the resolution. So anyone today or moving forward that wants to build a ranch, the first floor living area has to be at least 1,200 square feet. So if you build your home to the minimum 1,200 square feet, you can still have, if you're on like a 1 acre lot, an attached 1,200 square foot garage and a detached 1,200 square foot garage, which on a half acre lot is very generous. On a 1 acre lot, very generous. Even on a 2 acre lot, I think that's a lot. But once you go to 2 acre, you know, if you have a 1,200 square foot house, your limitation is going to go down a little bit, right? You're not going to be able to get that benefit to do the 1532. You'd have to stay at 1,200 for attached and 1,200 for detached. And that's assuming you build the smallest ranch possible under the current zoning resolution. For a 2-story house, we're talking minimum 1,600 square foot. So however you split that up, if you have a half story on the top, or a very small, like I'm seeing a lot of larger first story and then a very small second story, right? Not even a half story. So you still might be able to get closer to that larger potential size, even with trying to build the smallest home that Concord would allow you to build under the current code.
Heather, thank you for that. That was a great, quick refresher. Thank you very much. Yeah, the square footage it was basically what we had before. The issue was on lots 2 acres or greater, there was no limit to the number of accessory buildings.
Right.
Each that could be up to 1,532 square feet.
And if
thank
you
you
recall, we did have a discussion about, you know, what if there are special circumstances? And as Frank indicated, the BZA can take those up. If there's
Yes.
unique situations where, you know, the building might be appropriate in the neighborhood where it's being suggested, where it might not be appropriate in a more densely populated neighborhood. And at that time, the BZA could maybe look at the aesthetics or figure out maybe screening, landscaping, so it wouldn't be obnoxious to an adjoining property owner. And with the agreement of the applicant, you know, if they'd be willing to do those type of things, you know, as part of getting that approved, that's something that they could take up with the BZA if they really needed something that it wasn't permitted.
Thanks again, Mr. Chairman, that's all I had. Just the clarification of what those issues were.
It's always good to have a refresher.
It's always good to have a refresher. Thank
Just to
you.
kind of snap you back into what we're doing.
It does. Thank you.
Mr. Peterson.
Just a couple things to maybe reiterate. When we talked about the size of the square footage on the first floor, for example, 900 square feet, our thinking was, well, if you had 900 square feet on a first floor of a house, you could go to a much larger outbuilding, and that would look really out of proportion in a neighborhood, and it might be objectionable to other neighbors. So we gave that a lot of thought, and we said, well, you have to have some restrictions somehow, and we came up with the one that we did. The other one, as far as the aesthetics, I just want to reiterate what Frank said. We want them to, we'd like any addition or accessory building like that, large one, to look sort of residential, like it belongs, not like a machine shop. We spent a lot of time kicking that around, but there are no standards. What looks like a house to me might not look like a house to you. Concord has no standards that say what a residence has to appear like. So we just couldn't do that with aesthetics. There's just no standard. So, like was mentioned, we put a lot of time into these, trying to come up with the best that we can going forward as a township. And I don't know how many more lots we have that would be 6 acres left in the township, because we're, you know, using up a lot of the developable land, and the standard lots seem to be now 1 acre or ½ acre lots. And that's the direction that the community has gone. And we had to take that into consideration too. I had a ½ acre lot in my last house in Concord, and I had a 3-car garage building in the backyard on my half acre. Now my house was 2,400 square feet, so the barn didn't look out of proportion, but it was pretty large back there on a half acre. And, but it was legal and it was permitted. And we're trying to just keep things in balance as a community, as the township grows, to keep things in harmony with the way it's growing. So, but all of your inputs were excellent. We appreciate that. That's all I had, Andy.
Super. Thanks, Rich. Anybody else on the board want to make any comments since, based on what's been said? Now, just for the edification of the people that are here this evening and for those at home that are watching, this is public hearing number 1. Okay, there will be a second public hearing. Okay, it will go to the trustees. We are not the final decision on this process. Okay, so there will be a second public hearing, and that will be set up by the trustees, and they will discuss this as well. And their option, and they'll have an ability to talk, to speak, and formulate some opinions or ideas, in the meantime. And they have the ability to either approve our decision as it was made, they could make some adjustments to our decision, or they could completely reject our decision, and that's out of our control. Our job is to do what we've done. We take it to this point, and then once we're done, then it gets handed over to the trustees. They have a second public hearing that'll be scheduled in the future. There's a time limit. Everything will move it. It's not going to sit for an extended period of time. They'll announce the public hearing for this. They will have another, and you'll have a second bite of the apple, so to speak. You have a second chance to come and voice your opinion or voice any concerns you have about this to them. And like I said, and they have the option during that public hearing to either make some changes, amendments to what we've done, make some changes, tweaks, and adjustments. They could just accept our decision as it is, or they could just wholly just reject the whole thing and deny the entire process. So it really, this is not the final decision. So I want to make sure you don't feel like you're leaving here tonight and you've lost the battle, or your say has been said and you have no further recourse. There is a second opportunity that will be coming up, so just so you're aware. Okay. Any other comments or issues? Personally, I feel that this was very well thought out. We had a concerned resident that brought this to our attention, who was adversely affected by a kind of I hate to use the word loophole because that sounds nefarious, but through an omission in the zoning text that allowed for an addition to a home that was an extraordinarily large facility, large building, but because there were no restrictions and it was attached to the existing home, the guy was able to do what he did. He didn't break any rules. He didn't do anything that was wrong. It was the way the text was put together that allowed that to happen. And we saw that, and we heard the concerns, and we saw the end result, and we felt, wow, that's a problem. And we felt that we should address that, because that could be, the next one could be somebody else sitting in this room, or somebody else that has to deal with that kind of a large building being built next to them. And consequently, we felt that it was important to address this. And we saw that there was a deficiency in our zoning resolution to address this kind of a scenario. And we wanted to close that omission and make it so that there was a little more uniformity, a little more consistency. I understand people like to have extra buildings and store their stuff. I get it. I've seen huge RVs and 30-foot travel trailers and buses and all sorts of things that are out there. And I know that I'm sure a lot of people would like to be able to store those or put them in a garage or some facility on their property where it's not sitting out, so everybody has to look at it. I think that's important. So we tried. That's how we looked at this. We kind of discussed the square footages. We discussed the relationships between the existing home and these accessory buildings, and we felt, with what we had already on the books and what we came up with as a decision on this, we felt was a good compromise. It would still allow people to put a fairly substantial accessory building on their property without hindering them. but also put some limitations that would kind of require some thought and maybe a little more creativity from the homeowner standpoint and more consideration for the neighbors instead of just putting up some willy-nilly construction facility. So we felt that this was a good compromise and a good issue that we felt that we could move forward with. So that's how this arrived on our agenda. And this was, I don't know, Heather, what, 6 months we spent probably or longer discussing all the different parameters? It was a while.
I think four
Yeah.
meetings, 4 or 5 meetings.
Yeah,
at
4 or
least.
5
Yeah.
meetings, that's,
Yeah.
you know, so we definitely put some time in on this. We didn't just pick a number out of a hat and say, yep, that looks good, and we didn't, you know, try to have a little backroom discussion as to what we thought was fair or unfair. We really hashed this out, and all of our zoning commission meetings are open to the public, okay? And you're all welcome to come to those meetings, and we do have a section on our agenda that is specifically carved out for public comment. So when we have these things in front of us and we're having these discussions, we welcome the residents to come to the meetings and give us their input. That's how we got here. We had a resident that came, and during the public comment section, he addressed us and talked to us about what happened and what was going on. And we took action. And the same goes for any issue that we're taking on as a zoning commission. We're 5 guys. We have a great zoning inspector that does a lot of work and puts a lot of time and effort into putting the verbiage and everything together for the zoning resolution. But we're 5 guys. We're not right on everything. We don't know everything there is to know. And we certainly would welcome people to come in and give us their comments and opinions on things that we're considering, and you're welcome to do that. And as the chairman, I've been on the zoning commission for a long time, and I always believe in giving people the opportunity to have their say. I don't ever want anybody to ever say that, well, I didn't get to have my input, or I didn't get to come up and address the board. I'll let you say whatever you have to say, as long as it's reasonable and within the decorum of a public hearing. Have at it. I think it's important, and I'll support that to my dying breath. However, you know, we don't get a lot of participation. Well, there's many nights we sit here and hash out this stuff to an empty room, and so we're left to our own devices. We come up with a consensus, and we try to come up with a decision that we feel is fair and good for the community, and it's going to take the community, you know, the best interest at heart, and we go from there. And then we have these public hearings where you're invited to come and make comment, and there'll be another public hearing from the trustees on this exact issue, and you'll be again have the opportunity to make comments. So we try to give everybody as much input in this process as they possibly can give. And we appreciate you gentlemen coming in this evening and making your comments. We do take this stuff seriously. We do take your comments to heart. If there's some things that you bring up and there's some really some changes that we feel would need to be accommodated, now's the time to do it once we decide this evening, you know, before we have our final decision here. We do have opportunity to make some tweaks and adjustments here and there, and we appreciate you guys coming in and having your say. So at this point in time, I guess what I would like to do is, if there's no further comments from the board.
One comment, Andy, do we have to take into consideration when to do the Lake County
Oh,
planning?
yes, thank you.
2 memos.
I meant to say something. That's correct. We do have a letter from the Lake County Planning Commission.
2 of them, actually.
Well, there's a memorandum.
Yeah.
May I, Mr. Chairman, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
We're still in a public hearing. Is
Yes.
it
Yeah.
appropriate to close since we're bringing up another?
You already closed it.
Right.
You did close it.
Yeah, I did close.
Oh, I'm sorry. You
I
closed
closed
the
the
public
public portion
My bad.
of the
Sorry.
hearing. I haven't closed the public hearing yet. Okay, and I was getting to that point.
Okay.
So,
Well,
but I think before we close the public hearing, I think it would make sense to enter into the, and thanks, Rich, for catching that for me. I really appreciate that. I meant to say something earlier, and Heather was explaining some things, and I lost my train of thought.
Some of these might be of
Right.
interest to the audience,
We
too.
do have a letter from the, we send all of these issues to the Lake County Planning Commission for review, and if they see discrepancies or issues that they find, consideration for, they are a recommending body. They don't have a final say on what we do, but we certainly take their opinions and comments seriously. And we did receive a letter on September 30th from the Lake County Planning Commission. And it says, Dear Ms. Freeman, Lake County Planning Commission took under consideration the above-mentioned text amendment at their meeting on Tuesday, September 24th of 2024. The Lake County Planning Commission recommended that you do make the text changes with the following suggestions. Bullet point number 1, Lake County Planning Commission is concerned with the language, no accessory building shall be erected to height in excess of that of the principal building to which it is incident. The standard height in Concord Township is 35 feet. This language would allow accessory structures to be 34.99 feet in height, and also if there is a legal non-conforming building in regards to height or BZA gives a variance on height, it could be higher, and it is recommended to reconsider this language. Okay, the next bullet point. There is a new definition of breezeway, but there is no additional language on how the new term is going to be used in the zoning code. It is recommended that you state why you are defining this term. The next bullet point is most of the Concord Township zoning resolution treats accessory structures as a standalone structure or a detached structure. 15.03A 9 is the first time that has seen the term attached accessory structure. What is that? Is this an accessory structure attached to a main structure or a two accessory structures attached to each other? It is recommended to better define attached and detached accessory structure or not accept the change on 15.03A9. And the last bullet point is section 15.03A10 does not make sense in a separate section. It is recommended to combine it with the section previous. We are available to help with any aspect of this recommendation. If you have any questions, please feel free to call Dave Radishy, Director. Okay, that's from the Lake County Planning Commission. And we had a memorandum, okay, from Heather to the Zoning Commission. And it states, it is dated October 1st today. The Lake County Planning Commission made recommendations for modifications to the proposed text amendments. Staff is recommending the following modifications to the proposed amendments in order to address their concerns. Number 1, revise section 15.03A6 to read as follows. No accessory building shall be erected to a height in excess of that of the principal building to which it is incident, but the height shall also not exceed the height set forth in section 15.04. Number 2, in order to address the concerns of the raised bullet point 2 and 3, staff is recommending modifications to definitions as follows. Bullet point number 1, add new definition of building attached. A building which is physically attached to a dwelling, shares a common wall with the habitable part of the dwelling, and can be directly accessed from the habitable part of the dwelling via a doorway. A building connected to a dwelling by means of an unenclosed space, such as a breezeway, porch, or similar area which is not a part of the habitable area, is not an attached garage for purposes of this resolution. Next bullet point, revise existing definition of building detached, a building which is physically detached from a dwelling or other main use on a lot. And the last bullet point is revise existing definition of garage, private, an accessory building designed to store motor vehicles and other normal household accessories of the residents of the principal building with no facilities for mechanical service repair of a commercial or public nature. Okay? And then point number 3, regarding proposed section 15.03A10, this appears to be a formatting issue, as the section will read as follows. The square footage of any detached or attached accessory building on a lot shall not exceed the square footage of the living area on the ground floor level of the principal building on the lot, but shall also not exceed the maximums permitted in section 15.03A7 or 15.03A8. That is the memorandum.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to clarify any of those recommendations as they relate to the existing resolution.
Now, are these, in this memorandum, Heather, has the changes that you're proposing in the memorandum, have those been moved into the public hearing component with the amendments, or is this, would we have to consider the amendments plus your recommendation? What would be the?
If you wanted, if you thought these modifications that I was proposing tonight are appropriate for the other amendments that we're considering, I would recommend approval with these modifications.
Right, okay, so then we'll, okay.
Yeah, so for like amendment number 1, which you know we're already proposing to revise section 502 with a few other definitions. So my recommendation would be to approve amendment number 1 with the modification to add the new definition for the attached building, and then also to revise the existing definitions for detached building and private garage. There would be no changes to amendment number 2. Amendment number 3, I would recommend with one modification to section 1503A6, which is to add the verbiage, but the height shall also not exceed the height as set forth in 1504, which, just for your reference, that is 20 feet in most of the zoning districts. I think there's one district where it's 18 feet.
18 feet.
But, so the intent was the detached building cannot be taller than the main dwelling, but also cannot exceed the maximum 20 feet.
Right.
Yeah. If you recall, there was another incident over on Stewart Drive that was brought to our attention as well, that this issue could potentially prevent in the future, where there was more like
Right.
a ranch built with another detached garage, taller, out of scale in relationship to the home, where a neighbor had reached out to us as well at one point, objecting to how that, the aesthetics of that on a smaller lot, not quite a half acre. I think it's closer to an acre lot. So that building was about 1,024 square feet.
Okay. All right, any additional comments or input from the board? Frank?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Hiram?
None, sir.
I just think that Heather's memorandum does a nice job of taking the suggestions from the county and melding them into our revisions, so I would include that.
Right. I agree. Mr. Ifilis?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll echo Rich's comment. Heather's memorandum revising these sections are well prepared and very well understood now. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, at this point in time, we have no further comments from the board. The public portion of the hearing has been closed, and I would like to bring this public hearing to a close as well. And then under new business, we will do our votes. So we'll go through the rest of the agenda, and then we'll do our votes when we get to it under new business. Okay? So with that, we can we'll end this public hearing, and we'll move on we will move on in the agenda. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the last hearing. I'll entertain a motion.
There's no minutes.
There.
Yeah.
Well,
We don't have.
well,
Sorry,
okay.
there's none listed there. It's just holding the place. Sorry.
All right, so we won't have to worry about that. Correspondence report. Frank, any correspondence?
None for me, Mr. Chairman.
Hiram?
None, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Peterson?
Nothing, sir.
Mr. Ifilis?
Nothing, sir.
Thank you. I have nothing as well. Zoning inspector report. Heather, would you like to tell us what's going on?
Well, you know what? I really didn't have anything much prepared for this evening. I do have an update. The Johnny's Auto Car Wash and Spa is now open there over on Cryle and Old Cryle. So feel free to go frequent there. The creamery should be opening soon. The pool company that's building right up the street, sorry, over here, has started construction. I see they're moving some dirt.
I saw stakes
Yep.
in the ground the other
They're
day.
digging today.
Oh, they were digging today. I saw
Yeah.
it. It was when I went by the other day, I saw stakes, so.
Yep, and Taco Bell is well underway as well. We've had some interest in since the Quail Hollow Silverlode report went out. There has been some discussions between the JED and some other individuals about that report and potential uses. So I know I had mentioned at a previous meeting that the township has to kind of decide what can we really envision there, what would be appropriate on that site. So I'm thinking that we may have to start maybe having some discussions at this level to look at what the report was suggesting and what we think might be suitable at that location. what could we accept there? What are the pros and cons of the different uses that were suggested in that resolution? Because I think we all understand that the special district as it's written right now is very limited. It was crafted specifically for the hotel. There's a few other uses you can do there, but maybe not really feasible for that site per se. So I'm thinking, you know, if someone is going to want to redevelop that site, we're likely going to have to update zoning. So if we have a good idea of, you know, from the trustees' perspective, from this board's perspective, and, you know, what would be palatable there, good for Concord, I think we'd want to work with a future developer on how to change the zoning to get to where we want that property to be. So that's really it for tonight.
That's it?
Yeah.
Well, that's a short report.
Yeah.
Good stuff, though. Either that or you're getting better at it. Okay, the next item on the agenda is public participation. Any comments from the audience? We would like to, anything that, any burning issues or considerations or things you'd like to see on the agenda moving forward? Anybody have anything to say? No? Okay. Oh, sure, come on up. Please state your full name and address for the record.
Robert Haywood, 9704 Knightsbridge Lane.
Okay.
I came primarily for the zoning amendments that were on the board, and I wasn't necessarily for or against, but thank you, Frank, for talking about the variance part of it, because I'll probably be talking to Heather soon about the variance part of it. And I guess my question is, you mentioned about going around to your neighbors, because, you know, that's like the good thing to do, right? Talk to your neighbors. Hey, I'm going to build a building. Sure. You know, I don't want to screw you up or restrict your views, but I live on more of a secluded, you know, almost 4-acre lot. So if I go forward with something like that, which neighbors should I talk to? Just like both sides, or like behind me is Kirtland Hills?
Well,
so.
usually when you bring something like that up, especially to the zoning board of appeals,
Okay.
they, when you put your request in, will notify your neighbors
Okay.
that but their properties that butt up to yours.
Okay.
To look for input from them. If
Okay.
they object to it, that's when the thing will come to,
Okay.
you know, some kind of a decision.
Okay, great.
So you won't be blindsided. Everybody will be aware.
Okay.
They'll be asked to attend their meetings, you know, and voice their concerns, if any.
Okay.
I know over the years, I've had that happen to me personally. And with no objection, I just said, fine with me.
Okay.
And that's all it took.
So it's generally a very friendly process. then.
Very, very friendly.
Okay, great.
Right.
And it's also,
Well, unless your neighbor built some sort of, you know, obnoxious
it's also
building.
across the street too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Left, right, back, and front.
Yeah, I've got one neighbor, and then behind me is like a green space for like the HOA, I believe. That's what it is. It's some sort of conservatory. So, all right. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Okay, any other public comment?
9704,
Yeah.
okay. I'm 9715, so
Oh, okay. Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you too.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is new business. And we are going to vote to approve the zoning text amendments on the Concord Township zoning resolution as initiated by motion of the zoning commission. Okay? So we have 3 different amendments. What I would like to do is read the amendment, and then I will entertain a motion in the affirmative, and then Heather will call the roll. And just make sure that when you read or when you make your motion, that you include the term with modifications. So that includes, so we know that that includes the memorandum that Heather prepared prior to the meeting. Okay, so just make sure that when you make that amendment, that as you make that motion, that you say with modifications at the end of that motion for that particular amendment. So at this point in time, we're dealing with amendment number 1, revised section 5.02A definitions as follows. Revised definition of accessory buildings or use and use. Provide definition for new term breezeway. I'll entertain a motion to the affirmative.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the resolution with the modifications stated on the memorandum of October 1st.
Okay, I have a motion made.
Mr. Chairman, discussion.
Yes.
Clarify, Frank's referring to the memo. I don't know that Amendment 1 is subject to Heather's memo tonight. Is that, the Amendment 1 is related to several definitions in 502 that, correct me again if I'm wrong, one of them is not revised. Am I correct?
That's just added, Breezeway.
No, number 3 under 502 definitions, correct? That is not revised by Heather's memorandum.
Yep.
Correct?
As far as I can see, correct.
Okay, just I'm not trying to make clear what we're approving here, because it's a combination, right? Combination of what was already in the amendment plus
What's adding this?
adding,
That's right, we didn't change anything.
correct. So,
Yeah, we had no modification to Amendment 1. So,
But isn't that number 2? Aren't we doing the,
no, that's the
That's definitions.
That's the amendment. Anything in red is the amendment.
anything in red is already, before we receive this memorandum, if you go to number 3 under 502, you go to number 28, that's Breezeway, and then number 216, it's on page 5.23. Those were what were before us before Heather's recommendations. Correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and I think.
So in addition, she's adding a definition and revising 2 others. So there's 6 different items. Again, I'm restating just to make sure I understand what I'm voting for. There are 6 definitions that are being changed or revised or added.
Yes, that.
Correct?
Yes, the
Correct. Does
3
the
that we
board
were already contemplating plus.
And I withdraw my recommendation then.
That's why I'm offering
Because there's
discussion.
confusion right here.
To clarify, there are 3 definitions that are already in the amendment that were proposed before we got Heather's. So we have 3 more.
So this here's the one that has to be,
Yeah, he's right. This does call for changes to Amendment 1.
Correct. So these are 3 in addition to the 3 you already have.
Right, so he's correct in
Yeah.
including the modifications.
Yes.
And I'm restating to make sure it means all 6.
Oh, yeah.
so,
It is all
okay.
6. We're accepting,
This and this,
yes.
which is what you said.
That's what I thought I said, but
Okay.
now I'm confused.
No.
So,
Okay.
so we're adding a definition for building attached,
Right.
correct? We're adding a definition, no, yeah, for new term breezeway. 2 additions.
Breezeway was already in here.
Already,
It says provide definition for new term breezeway.
but it's already,
Okay,
It was already initiated.
It was
So
already-
I think you guys are getting confused with what was already
Okay, it's
initiated.
what was already in here, there's 3 of them.
and then we're revising accessory building or use and use. And then also building attached, building detached.
And garage private.
And garage private.
No, wait. No, we're revising building detached and garage private.
Correct.
Okay. That's what we're doing in 502.
Right.
That's what Frank meant, I believe.
Yes, and Frank's motion was an overview. I'm just trying to make sure we understand that there's 6 different touches here.
Yes.
Yes,
okay.
there's 6 different, 3 we already had and 3 more.
Having said
So
that,
are you
I'll-
okay with your motion, Frank?
The motion's okay.
I was
I'm
going to
just
say the
making
motion
sure.
should be
having
okay.
said that, I'll second his motion.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so I have a motion made and seconded by Mr. Peterson, seconded by Mr. Peterson, motion made by Mr. Schindler. And Heather, would you call the roll?
Okay. Mr. Ruppert,
Yes.
Mr. Schindler,
Yes.
Mr. Ifelis?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes?
Mr. Lingenfelter?
Yes. Okay, so let the record reflect that we have 5 ayes, no nays, no abstentions for amendment number 1. Okay, now I'll consider a motion for amendment number 2.
That is,
Don't all rush to the microphones.
Hold on a second.
I'm pausing, sorry, Mr. Chairman, because there's a little confusion trying to
Yeah.
understand what it is we're approving on amendment number 2.
Yep,
1502.
use regulations.
Yes, I'm looking at. None of which, if I may, are altered by Heather's, there's no modifications to amendment 2. See that? I got that right. Yeah, so there's no modifications to amendment number 2, it's as submitted.
I believe that's correct. Right, Heather?
Yes.
I don't see any comment, I don't see any comments in your memorandum referencing 1502. So, and 1502-1.
Consequently,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve amendment number 2.
Okay? And that's to revise section 15.02 use regulations to clarify that the permitted and conditional uses are principal uses in both the text and table 15.02-1.
Correct.
Okay, so I have a motion made.
I second, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Schindler seconds.
Discussion? Sorry.
Have at it.
Again, the planning commission had questions on this amendment, 1502, the use, which covers 1503A9 and 1503A10, which is covered in Heather's number 3. 1503A10 is revised.
You're
on
jumping to the third amendment. We're about to vote on the second amendment.
We're on
Second-
1502.
Yeah.
The second amendment is use regulations, right? 1502?
We're in 1502.
Yep. There is no comment from
Nothing in
the
here,
Lake
yeah.
County Planning Commission on 1502, or that references 1502 in their letter
Okay,
to the board.
I stand corrected.
Yes,
Thank you.
that's okay. Better to be safe than sorry.
Okay,
Are you good?
yes,
No further discussion.
stand corrected, thank
I
you.
have a motion made, and I'll consider the second. Did we get this to the Frank second?
I
Okay,
seconded.
so we had motion made by Mr. Peterson, seconded by Mr. Schindler. Heather, if you could call the roll.
Mr. Ruppert,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes?
Mr. Schindler,
Yes.
Mr. Ifelis,
Yes,
Mr. Lingenfelter.
Yes. Okay, so let the record reflect that for amendment number 2, we have 5 ayes, no nays, no abstentions, so that amendment number 2 is approved. Okay, I'll entertain a motion for the final one, amendment number 3, which is to revise section 15.03A, general requirements for accessory buildings as follows. Add a provision that accessory buildings shall not exceed the height of the principal building on the lot. Add a provision limiting lots greater than 2 acres to have more than 2 detached accessory buildings with a maximum combined gross floor area of 1,532 square feet. Add a provision that any attached or detached accessory building shall not exceed the square footage of the living area on the ground level of the principal building on the lot, but also not to exceed the maximum square footages permitted for detached accessory buildings.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'm going to make a motion to approve amendment number 3 as submitted, together as modified by the memorandum of October 1st from Heather Freeman, item numbers 1 and 3.
Excellent. Very good.
I'll second that motion,
We have
Mr.
a
Chairman.
motion made by Mr. Iaphellis, second by Mr. Peterson. Heather, if you would call the roll.
Mr. Schindler,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes?
Mr. Reppert,
Yes.
Mr. Ifelis.
Yes.
Mr. Lingenfelter.
Yes. Okay, let the record reflect that we had 5 ayes and no nays, no abstentions to amendment number 3, so that amendment also passes with modifications. Okay,
My thanks to Heather.
Thank you.
yep, that's what, very good. Very, very
Next
good.
time we'll make sure it's.
I know that, well, I know that, and I know
confusing
that
on
letter came in last second from the planning commission, didn't help. You know, it rolls in, lands on your desk, you know, the day of the meeting, and
day before.
you gotta fly like a maniac to try to get it figured out, so you did a nice job, and we appreciate your effort. Okay, the next item on the agenda this evening is, under new business, is to review and discuss the agreement between Concord Township and the I-9 Group LLC for the property located at Old Cryle, and Cryle being parcel number 08A020000048-0. Bridie, do you, now, you can, I know you have, you don't have to leave,
Well,
but if you feel comfortable in leaving, I won't want to say that you can do that. You can
so-
step out.
I mean, I think that just because it's a conflict, it's a pretty.
I understand,
conflict. I
and
should
that-
probably leave the room, but, carry on.
Okay, I just,
Thank you.
yep.
Have a good evening.
I just want everybody to know I didn't kick her out.
Yes, you
Okay,
did.
she is
How dare
leaving,
you.
she is leaving under her own, she is leaving under her own free will. No, just, I mean, for clarification, Bridie's, is part of her law firm. There's one of the owners of the properties that is in question here is with Bridie's law firm, so consequently they could view that as a potential conflict of interest. So she's excused herself from this part of the conversation, so she's not even here to hear it. Okay, the issue that we undertook, gentlemen, was to look at the agreement on the sidewalk completion. I know that was kind of a little bit of a stone in some people's shoe as we were going through this process. And, you know, after seeing everything being built and getting done, I see the value in completing that sidewalk. I think it'll give it a much better look and finish, and I think it'll give it I think it'll add to the safety of the people that are using that area. And according to this agreement, it was my understanding that when it was drawn up, it was basically up to us to decide when and if that sidewalk should be built, and all we need to do is call it out, and they have to comply. That was the agreement. So what I'd like to do is,
But we have 5 years to do so.
right, we don't have to do it today, we don't have to do it, but we have, but when we do it, they have to do it. They have to move forward with it. And my thought process was, after reviewing everything, you know, seeing the construction, you know, when it's all just a big dirt and, you know, and piles of rubble and stuff, it's kind of hard to see it. Once the buildings start going up and you see the value of those sidewalks, I think that should be done. I think it's something that needs to be done, and it should be done now. We should get that as a part of, while they're still getting this completed, it's not too late to get it kicked in and get going with that and get the sidewalks completed. That was my thought. Now, if you've got a different thought, by all means, express it.
I have a thought.
Yes, sir.
I went to the open house event they had for us Friday night, and I'm really impressed with what they've done for our community by building such a beautiful structure. And the car wash is first class, the creamery is first class, and I know they put out a lot of cash to do that. They went above and beyond what they could have done to build something a little less expensive. And I looked at the conditions for the sidewalk that are in our agreement. One is pedestrian load, and I would say pedestrian load, I've never seen anybody walk down Cryle Road. I drive that all the time. I've never seen one pedestrian, maybe on a bike. Yeah. Secondly, necessary infrastructure connections, and I don't know of any. And third, adjacent sidewalk connections. Well, there's nothing adjacent to connect to. So I think to force them or even ask them to do a sidewalk when they haven't sold their first cup of ice cream yet would be premature. it's only been 18 months since the agreement was signed. My suggestion is, why don't we wait 2 years from now? We'd still have 18 months left in the agreement. Let them have a chance to make that business profitable before they spend money on a sidewalk to nowhere. That's my suggestion. I think it's premature to have a sidewalk there. They landscaped it, it's beautiful, the parking lot is beautiful. And, you know, to add additional expense at this point, I don't think it's fair. My thought.
Mr. Chairman, I think I'm gonna walk down Crown Road.
Okay, good luck.
And see if there's a need for a sidewalk. You're right, we're looking at if there's somebody to the left, somebody to the right, somebody across the street, everybody, if they're all developed, yeah, I think we ought to have a sidewalk. But if this, like you said, and I'd like to see this, a sidewalk to nowhere. In where I used to live in Reading, we used to have a bridge to nowhere. And it's still standing there and it doesn't go anywhere. And it's a waste of money. And it's an eyesore. Now, I don't think a sidewalk just sitting there would be an eyesore, but I think I'd like to walk down in the summer, in the fall, whenever it may be, and see if there is really a need for a sidewalk. That's my opinion.
And plus, you bring up a good point. If something isn't going to go in there for a couple of years, force them to do it now. In a couple of years, that sidewalk could be deteriorated to a point it would have to be replaced, possibly. You know, I mean, from winter and stuff. We hope not, but you never know.
Yeah.
Realistically.
Well, one of the things I think there's a couple things that are important to bring up on that regard. Number one, that provision is in the zoning resolution. They were supposed to build a sidewalk. We gave them basically special dispensation.
Yes, we did.
It should have been built, period, end of story.
Yeah.
But we thought that it might be, like you said, it was kind of a sidewalk to nowhere. Okay. However, now you got to keep in mind, Victor just got his approval on his site plan, which is directly across the street.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be a retail and or business facility, right? There's going to be traffic, there's going to be parking, there's going to be people there. There's going to be traffic going from, I would have to assume, knowing that there's the car wash right there and the creamery, I would assume that there's probably going to be people that are in that building at lunchtime and or after work that maybe want to go get an ice cream, and there's going to be a requirement for that there's no sidewalks.
Sure.
Okay, and this is happening. This isn't like you said, if this was in a remote area and it was 3, 5, 7, 10 years before anything next door or across the street or whatever were coming, I would probably tend to agree. But now that we've given the green light to Mr. Victor and his development his project to go forward, that's directly across the street. There's going to be sidewalks. There's going to be parking over there. I think I think it's more for a public safety issue. And you have to remember, the creamery isn't going to be. It's not a drive-through only. You're going to be parking there. There's going to be kids. You're going to have baseball teams after baseball league is over. The games are over. People are going to bring their kids. The kids up there. There's going to be kids running around. I think a sidewalk makes a lot more sense in that regard from a public safety standpoint. Aside from the fact that there's other developments that are starting to go in and things are starting to
We have
develop.
sidewalks across the street.
Mm-hmm.
We do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Streets.
And like I said, that really wasn't supposed to be a matter of conversation. We basically dropped that requirement when we approved their plan to put their preliminary plan to put this in. Right. There was some conversation about that. There was actually, I think Rich Iafalise was very opposed to moving forward, allowing the project to go forward without building the sidewalks. Right. But we decided to forgo that. But then we had that's the reason what necessitated this agreement to be put together.
Wasn't it? Well, it wasn't going to be a deal breaker, was it?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, my objection was similar to objecting to a gas station on the other side. There's a master plan, has been planned out. There's been a lot of investment by the township in that whole sector, that corridor, the Capital District. And to honor that, Yes, in present tense, I agree. People aren't walking today, but the plan calls for pedestrian. It means to provide for, that was the vision. And for me, at honoring a plan and honoring the investment that the township has given and the study and the times that and the money they put into that, I agree with it. And we should honor the master plan. That master plan called for pedestrian access throughout that area. I objected to not having the sidewalk in then. I still object to not having it now. It should have been put in under the approval.
But don't you think
because it honors the plan as other properties begin to develop, let alone the mixed use we're now getting as you retail across the street, ice cream, just in a gas station. All these things are happening now. We should honor that plan. It makes a lot of sense for us. We don't have it anywhere else. We don't have that opportunity anywhere else in Concord to have that streetscape, that people coming around. It's a vision I think the township has. We should honor it.
if you look at the map though, the Victor development is really nowhere near the entrance to the ice cream store. He might have a little sidewalk here, but there's going to be a gap of 300 feet before you get up to the ice cream store entrance.
I'm sorry, you're just talking about a Victor development. I'm talking about the plan for all of this properties being developed. It's all going to happen.
Can't we look at that 2 years down the road and see how it's developed before we put a burden on a brand new business that's trying to make a success? You know how much ice cream you have to sell to pay for that sidewalk?
I'm not worried about the cost, that's for sure.
Well,
this was a requirement and we let it out. We let them out. They should put it in. Should put it in now. As Andy pointed out, it's the perfect time before everything's gone. Then the objection to come in will be even more onerous coming from us.
Well, the center was, and I agree with you, based on access, easy access for everybody. And sidewalks, of course, would definitely do that. It would bring a cohesiveness of that whole development together. So I understand where you're coming from. We're supposed to be looking down the future.
Yes.
And the future calls for use of the township, residents, and easy accessibility to everything. So I agree. We should be looking.
I look at Crown Road has all these crosswalks with walk, don't walk. I've never seen anybody cross at any of those intersections, be it at Auburn Road or be it down at Capitol Parkway.
Yeah.
It's just, they're there and they go nowhere.
Yeah.
And I think it's really an unfair burden at this point in time.
No,
and we have 2 years. In 2 years, we'll still have 18 months in the agreement. And we'll see what has developed in 2 years.
That's true too. So we're caught in a dilemma. Do we do it now?
What do we lose by not having it? I would say, I agree with Andy, there'll be kids there, but they've got a giant patio outside for outside events.
Yeah,
And it's way back from the street.
that's true.
Carmen, any more comment?
No.
Frank, any further comment?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Peterson, anything
Good.
else?
I'm good.
Okay, Mr. Ifelis?
I'm good.
Okay. So, what do we want to do?
I will make a motion to enforce the requirement of a sidewalk per the agreement dated April the 4th, 2023 upon the IN9 Group, LLC.
Okay, I have a motion made. Do I get a second?
I second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I have a motion made and seconded. Heather, call the roll for me. A motion made and seconded to enforce the motion made is to enforce the agreement that was set up April 4th, 2023 for the between Concord Township Zoning Commission and the I-9 Group.
Did you all want to have any discussion before you take that
That's
vote?
an enforcement at this time.
I'm sorry, thank you, Rich. I should have
Because it could be
added
enforced later.
at this time, sorry.
Okay,
And that motion mean at this time.
right. So I have a motion made
Okay.
to at this time to enforce the agreement and it was seconded by Frank. Frank, you still good with your second?
Second.
Okay. All right, Heather, call the roll.
Mr. Ifelis?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
No?
Mr. Ruppert?
No,
Mr. Lingenfelter?
Yes?
Mr. Schindler?
Yes.
Okay, let the record reflect we have 3 ayes and 2 nays for the review on and the discussion of the agreement, and so the agreement will be enforced.
Now, who's gonna tell them?
Heather.
The chairman?
Heather used to do the
Righty.
The chairman?
yeah. Sharon, no problem.
Well, no, I'm just asking.
Yeah, I don't know.
who's
That's a
gonna-
good. I think that's a good question. Who would do that, Heather? Do you know? Would that be me or would that be?
Well,
Does it say in the
being that
agreement?
I'm the secretary of this board, I would likely need to reach out to let them know. There will have to, obviously, some conversation between this board and IN9 regarding time frame and things like that. Specific design and everything all has to be agreed to between both parties. I do want to remind everybody as well that this is Cryle Road is a county road, so we're going to have to navigate this with the county engineer. Timing, all of this, could reasonably go into next year, right? I mean,
Oh, definitely.
to get through any of this, I mean, it could be
Sure.
just expectation wise, really, it still could be a year out or something. Who knows, right? We're going to have a new county engineer in 2025. Mr. Gills is not running again, so we're going to have to get familiar, work with their new him as well.
Is your name on the ballot, Rich?
No.
I just thought I'd ask.
But
that being said-
obviously, I can reach out to the board, to IN9 and to
Right.
the board.
The procedure that's going to go forth and what you're stating would still allow it to be out there at some given time farther down the road. What we've done tonight is say we want it to be done. So
Start the ball rolling.
start the ball
Yeah,
rolling.
basically, and I'm
That's
looking
basically
and looking at the agreement. There's a what would it be? Section number 2. Notices. It says all notices, demands,
Yeah.
or other communication given under this agreement shall be in writing and shall be either hand delivered by a nationally accepted overnight carrier, or mailed certified, postage prepaid, or overnight courier to the parties at their respective addresses as follows. And then they have Concord Township, and then we have I-9 Group LLC.
Right.
So we have to make sure that they receive the notification in writing that what's been
Yeah.
done and what the outcome of this conversation was tonight. Okay. So
And it's gonna go around the fire hydrant.
Well, the design
Good
is
memory.
subject to the discussion between this board and IN9.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, how it's going to work. They're
I've seen quite a
So
few
Heather,
sidewalks.
if you're unsure on the communication, feel free to call me.
okay. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, if you want me to do it, you want me to talk to him or whatever.
Oh no, I will. I'll prepare something, to be mailed out certified.
Right.
But I'm happy to. I mean,
Yeah.
you may need to sign it or something
yeah,
like
if I-
that.
yeah, if anything, anything.
I'll touch base
Yep.
with you regarding that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Even though I wasn't chairman when this came to being, I'm chairman now, and it's
Right.
it's with the zoning commission. So if I have to be involved, obviously I'll be more than glad to
Okay.
to take care of that, whatever it is I need to do. If I need to do anything.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So that concludes the new business for this evening. And now I would like to move on to old business, which is a work session to review proposed zoning text amendments as outlined in the memo dated July 30th, 2024, for modifications to district uses.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to make can we table this until our next meeting?
You want to table this? Oh, come on. I was just getting ready to get rolling.
Well, there's something coming up
Right.
tonight that I'd like to be available to.
Sure. No problem.
Okay?
Absolutely no problem. See, you were out there listening. You had your ear to the door, didn't you?
Sure,
I know how you work.
Oh, I was watching. No, I heard old business.
Okay, so with that, our next zoning commission hearing is going to be when? November 5th. November 5th. We're in November?
Election day.
Election day. Election day, a big day. Speaking of election day, I would love to encourage all of the residents of Concord to go out and vote yes for our fire levy. We need support. We need that levy passed, and I sure hope that that will go with flying colors, no questions asked. I know the trustees right now are stressing big time with getting this levy passed. They're really nervous, and this has an impact on everybody, folks. It really does, and it's going to be a real shame if it doesn't pass. It will be a real shame, and then the end results will be seen, and I'm afraid that what people see is not going to be good, and they're going to be disappointed, and you only get to vote once. So let's hope that everybody gets out and supports that levy for us. We really need this to go through for the betterment of the community. I think it's very important. So normally I don't make comments or statements from this dais on political issues, but for the levy for this township, I think it's important that everybody knows that we need to get that thing passed. So, okay.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I will not be here November the 5th.
Wow.
Record.
Nor will I, Mr. Chairman.
Two down. Wow. Thankfully, we have two alternates.
Right.
Now, very capable, by the way. So you better watch. Don't miss too many, because, hey, you know what happens.
Believe me, I was worried.
Were you?
Yeah.
He didn't want to be here today. He drug himself
Who wants
here.
me to?
He drug himself here because he knew that he was on the verge. He was under double secret probation. So.
Oh.
Okay. Next zoning commission meeting will be November 5th. This meeting is adjourned. Have a nice evening.